welcome back. This is Morning News Today. And today is a big day for millions of religious people across the world. Jewish families begin the 8-day Passover period tonight. They remember the story of how Moses led Jewish slaves to freedom about 3,500 years ago. Wendy Kahn, National Director of the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, is with us this morning to share the symbolism of the food eaten at Passover or Pesach. Good morning, Wendy.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me, and happy Easter.
Yes, happy Easter to you too. I see you've got some gorgeous snacks here for us, but firstly, what is the sort of, how is the Jewish family, how is it generally sort of celebrated Pesach?
Pesach is a very family-oriented experience, a lot of educational value, families gathering around a Seder table and communicating and sharing the stories of slavery and freedom and the values and the importance of freedom with children. And that's done largely through food, and it's done through stories, and it's done through warm interaction. And I think that's what's so important about Pesach. It's a really family-oriented experience.
And of course you've got different people celebrating at different levels of sort of how much they go into tradition. Some people take it quite relaxed and other people go full on.
Correct. But I think it lends itself to that kind of relaxed environment. It's not just people in synagogue praying, it's also bringing it home and into the home environment.
Absolutely. Well, that's where culture finds its definition, is in how people share their identity. And food is a big part of that in South Africa, no matter what religion or race you belong to.
Absolutely.
So tell us about traditional Pesach food.
They're really just a few examples. It's a very, very involved dinner.
Absolutely.
But I just brought a few examples to share with you. The most important and the most well-known is the matzah. And when the Jews left Egypt, Pharaoh said, "You can go." And they didn't wait around, and they didn't push fate. They just straight away got onto their horses and whatever, and they got the hell on out of there. And because of that, they didn't have enough time for the bread to rise, and that's how we got left with the matzah. And the matzah is a key part of the Seder, and we eat much of it, a lot of it, and that's how the matzah came about. It didn't have enough time to rise before we left Egypt.
So essentially unleavened bread.
Unleavened bread.
Fantastic. And what do you pair that
And of course,
with?
the whole 8 days, we are not allowed to eat anything that has risen, any flour products that have been allowed to rise. We don't eat for the entire period.
Okay, super.
So it's a good time to go banting. Then we have, this is a very interesting, and I'm not sure if you can see that. This is the horseradish.
See if I can show that to our camera.
So this is the actual horseradish, and the real, this is what we're actually supposed to eat. But this is, and this is to remind us of the bitterness of what life under slavery was like.
I don't want to lift it too much, otherwise I'm going to spill this all down my front. But it's delicious.
Yeah, and we remember the bitterness of living under slavery, and we must remember that there's still. I read this morning that there are over 40 million people in the world who are still today living under slavery. And last year we actually had Robin Kerner, or a few years ago we had Robin Kerner from CNN talking at our Freedom Seder, and she spoke about modern day slavery and the modern day slavery project that CNN is so involved with. And we need to remember that there are still people today that are living under slavery, human trafficking, horrific things in our world, and we should never think that this is just a historical thing.
And of course it's important to teach children. That's part of the historic passing on of culture, is to tell children about the symbolism of food so that they can carry that message on. Otherwise that is lost.
And to be wary and to be looking out for situations where this still happens. This is haroshet, and it's a very, very interesting mix of wine and nuts and apple. And if you notice, it looks very much like cement.
Yes, or mince. Very fine mince.
Yeah, but this is the idea of this was, the slaves in Egypt had to build these pyramids, and we remember this reminds us of the cement that we put together the big stones with. It was hard work. It was intense. It was the hardship, and we need to remember that.
So all these dishes aren't eaten in isolation. They're paired with other dishes and sort of So they're complements to sort of a bigger feast.
Yes, and it's all about retelling that story and the values and lessons.
Okay. We've got very little time
Well,
left.
we've got the egg.
Okay.
And the egg is also an important part. We eat it in salt water to remember the tears of the affliction.
Okay.
And also an egg, as an egg, it's the one food that the longer you cook it, the harder it gets.
Okay.
And just like, we became resilient and persistent. And just, of course, wine. I have to mention the wine, the 4 cups of wine, and those are important parts of our Seder.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Wendy. I wish we had so much more time to discuss.